Good afternoon once again. Is everyone ready? Good afternoon. Welcome to our media briefing. And welcome to Public Protector House. My name is Kalalelo Masibi and I'm the spokesperson for the Public Protector. And the Public Protector has just joined us to address you or to release her report on Prasa. We will also be joined any moment now by our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Maria du Toit. I would also like to extend a special word of welcome to the complainants. And I would also like to mention to them that the reason they were excluded from the lockup is because the lockup was arranged specifically for the media. The Prasa chairman, Dr. Popo Molefe, is also here. We'd like to welcome him as well. As you are aware, the report was embargoed, and as soon as the preparator starts talking to you, the embargo will be lifted. And as usual, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the Public Protector's address. And we will ask you to identify yourself by giving us your name and surname and the media house that you represent. We will also have an opportunity for one-on-one interviews after the Q&A session. Dr. Maria du Toit has just joined us, and on that note, I'm going to hand over to the Public Protector to address you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We appreciate your presence. Firstly, I would like to apologize over the fact that we're starting quite late. I understand that the lockup started a little bit later than we anticipated, and we do apologize. It's something that we're experimenting with, but we hope it was worth your while. In all pay consolidated investments holdings versus Chief Executive Officer of the South African Social Security Agency, the Constitutional Court said the following: it is because procurement so palpably implicates socioeconomic rights that the public has an interest in it being conducted in a fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective manner. Derailed is my report as Public Protector issued in terms of Section 181B of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and Section 8.1 of the Public Protector Act 23 of 1994. The report communicates my findings and the appropriate remedial action I'm taking in terms of the remedial power given by Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution. The report is issued following the investigation of 37 complaints initially lodged by the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, SATAU, in 2012. The complaints were later pursued by the National Transport Movement, NTM. It was alleged that there was maladministration and related improper conduct involving procurement irregularities, conflict of interest, nepotism, human resources management, including victimization of whistleblowers by the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Montana, and other functionaries at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Prasa. Ladies and gentlemen, Prasa is an important and I believe strategic organ of state. Its handling of public finances and procurement of goods and services has implications for efficient and effective public transport delivery in compliance with Section 195 of the Constitution. Section 195 of the Constitution provides, among others, a requirement that, I quote, public administration must be governed by the democratic values and principles enshrined in the Constitution, including the following principles. A high standard of professional ethics must be promoted and maintained. B, efficient, economic, and effective use of resources must be promoted, close quote. As a public infrastructure provider, Prasa has implications for the economy. A state-owned enterprise with an estimated total net value of assets over 19 billion as at 2010/2011. Prasa is an organ of state listed as a national government business enterprise in terms of Schedule 3B of the Public Finance Management Act 1 of 1999, the PFMA. Prasa has 4 subsidiaries, namely Metro Rail, operating commuter rail services in urban areas, Shosholoza Mail, operating regional and intercity rail services, Autopax, operating regional and intercity coach services, and Intersite, managing the corporate property portfolio. Prasa reported an accumulated loss of 4.4 billion for the year 2010 to 2012. These are the 2 years that the investigation has been focusing on. That would be the year 2010 to 11 and the year 2011 to 2012. Prasa reported an accumulated loss of 1 billion for the year 2014/2015. This is the current financial year. The budget allocation from government for Prasa for the MTEF period 2015/16 to 2017/2018 is 17.2 billion. The 37 cases reported by the complainant mostly deal with alleged procurement irregularities, with the amount involved being more than 2.8 billion. As the report was being finalized, further allegations of procurement irregularities at Prasa were reported. We didn't investigate those. We regard them as issue creeps, and we are considering them possibly for the next report or for somebody else to do the investigation, as I will clarify later. I must indicate upfront that SATAW's attempt to withdraw its complaint is discomforting, particularly because Prasa management was initially reluctant to cooperate, using the withdrawal as a basis for questioning this office's continuation with the investigation. Allegations of victimization of whistleblowers, though not yet adjudicated, do add to the concern. There is an indication, for example, that Mr. Craig Nte may have suffered an occupational detriment after whistleblowing while a member of the executive of SATAW, which was later deposed, followed by SATAW's inexplicable attempt to withdraw the matter. This matter is dealt with in the part of this report dealing with human resources complaints relating to arbitrary suspensions and dismissals. During the course of the investigation, various allegations regarding victimization of current and former employees of Prasa were raised by the complainant and some executives. I have, however, decided to defer this issue to be adjudicated in the second volume of this report. Prasa is controlled by a Prasa Board of Control, chaired by a non-executive chairman, and which in terms of Section 49, subsection 2B of the PFMA is its accounting authority. The Group Chief Executive Officer, GCEO, has delegated authority in terms of Prasa's powers and authority of the board and delegation of authority. The essence of the complaints was that Mr. Montana, then Group Chief Executive Officer of Prasa, and Prasa improperly awarded tenders, appointed service providers without following proper tender processes, and allowed maladministration, corruption, conflict of interest, and financial mismanagement in the procurement of goods and services. It was also alleged that they managed human resources irregularly, including nepotism and the improper handling of whistleblowers. NTM, the complainant, specifically alleged the following. 1. Prasa improperly cancelled all contracts for cleaning services on 15 March 2012 and subsequently improperly appointed Riahona Commercial and Industry Hygiene and Katanga Cleaning Services on a contract valued above 500,000. On a contract above the 500,000 threshold, without advertising and in contravention of the Treasury regulations and supply chain management policies of Prasa. 2. Riahona Commercial and Industry Hygiene was awarded a contract due to its association with the GCEO's close business associate, Mr. Isaac Modisele. 3. Prasa appointed Sidus Security Company improperly at a higher rate on tender 525/2010 GAU/PS to replace National Force Security on the instructions of the GCO, but improperly terminated the contract 9 months after its appointment. 4. Proper procurement processes were not followed in the appointment of Vimtsire Security Services Company, which allegedly failed to meet the minimum requirements for appointment. It was also alleged that Royal Security was also appointed on the same tender in 2009 and allegedly billed Prasa 2.8 million instead of the agreed amount of 2.5 million per month. 5. The appointment of Royal Security on the tender concerned was irregular, as its original contract was terminated by Prasa due to its underperformance. 6. An amount of 600,000 alleged to have been improperly authorized by Prasa's head of corporate services when was improperly paid in advance to Enlighten Security for a contract for the Tshwane region prior to its appointment on a specific tender. I will try not to read the tender numbers. Number 7, a dark fiber and integrated communication systems tender amounting to 800 million rand was improperly awarded to Siemens nationally during the financial year 2009/2010, whereas the advertisement was for a narrower reach. 8. A tender for the installation of high-speed passenger gates worth 800 million was awarded to a certain contractor in 2009/2010 for the Doringfontein station, but it was later improperly extended to other stations nationally without following proper tender processes. 9. Prasa improperly incurred an upfront payment to a developer of the City Mall for the construction of an underground train station. It's called Bridge City Project, without going on a bidding process and without proper authorization during the period 2008 to 2010. 10. Prasa improperly appointed a media company to produce Hamba Nathi during 2008 to 2009. 11. A Prasa board member, Mr. Vusi Twala, was improperly awarded a tender by Intersight, a subsidiary of Prasa, to provide CCTV cameras. 12. A change management consultant, Mr. Ezra Ndwandwe, was appointed at a cost of 2 million without following proper procurement processes during 2008/2009. 13. The GCEO improperly awarded a tender amounting to an estimated 10 million rand to the then CEO of the South African Rail Commuter Corporation, Mr. Edwin Lekota, for the development of a contingency emergency preparedness program for Metro Rail without following proper procurement processes. For the Umjanji Consortium, a company formed and incorporated after the closing date for submission of tenders on this specific tender, was improperly awarded a tender on media advertising and broadcasting concession agreement in March 2011 without following a proper procurement process in contravention of the Prasa supply chain management policies. 15. The GCEO improperly awarded a contract for the provision of professional advisory service on the signaling project to a friend, Mr. Makensa Mabunda of Siaya BD, who did not possess the necessary skills and experience and without following proper procurement processes. 16. A tender amounting to 22 million for the Park Station Development Framework was allegedly not advertised but recommended for approval to be awarded to a contractor named Arup, which was associated with Dr. Gasa, a member of the Prasa board, during November 2009. 17. Between the years 2008 and 2010, Prasa engaged construction companies in the 2010 Soccer World Cup station building project, the CAPEX project, and renovation of existing stations without following proper procurement processes, and overspending of 2 billion rand amounting to fruitless and wasteful expenditure was incurred in addition to the budgeted amount of 3 billion. 18. During January 2010, Autopex, a subsidiary of Prasa, lost buses during theft, and Prasa failed to pursue an investigation into the matter, but instead replaced the buses at a cost of 2.8 million rand. 19. In April 2010, Autopex concluded an irregular security contract with Futuris Guarding Pty, amounting to 54,333 rand 20 per month. 20. Prasa was delaying to pay Rasa Kanya Builders, the service provider to Prasa Corporate Real Estate Solutions, Prasa CRES, and has improperly served a notice of termination of the contract, thereby leaving 36 employees of Rasa Kanya Builders without pay for services rendered. 21. The GCEO or Prasa incurred irregular and/or fruitless and wasteful expenditure relating to the following transactions: One, an upfront payment of an amount of 80 million for the FIFA World Cup sponsorship without proper approval. Two, budget and/or allocated funds which resulted in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And to this end, the GCEO invested funds with FIFA based on the agreement that Prasa would recoup the expenditure through sales of tickets to communities or soccer fans, and it is asserted that the money was never recovered. 22. Brand leadership was awarded the new Prasa branding contract to the value of 9 million. However, the contract was improperly inflated to 90 million, thereby resulting in irregular or fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 10 million rand. 23. During the period of 2009-2010, the GCEO allegedly requested 1 billion rand funding from the National Treasury on the pretext that it would be used during the taking over of operations of Shosholoza Mail. It is alleged that National Treasury paid 500 million, and nevertheless the funds were never used for their intended purpose. 24. Prasa operational expenditure OPEX budget was improperly overspent by 2.2 billion without the approval of the Prasa board during the period of 2009-2010. 25. Prasa head office staff vacated its offices at Jorrison Building 14 months before the expiry of the lease agreement, but Prasa continued to pay rental, which constituted fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 26. After vacating Jorrison Building, Prasa acquired Umjanji House Building to accommodate its head office staff without following proper procurement processes and without a proper budget approval. 27. The GCEO instructed Prasa management at the Intersite building in Woodmead to vacate the premises 20 months prior to the expiry of the lease agreement, but continued to pay for the lease, thereby constituting fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 28. The GCEO dismissed 5 senior executives unlawfully during the years 2008 and 2011. And the CCMA ordered their reinstatement, which he rejected, and instead compensated them with an estimated 5 million rand, which constitutes fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The group executive HR was replaced improperly by the GCEO's uncle, Mr. Ramutla, without proper recruitment processes being followed. 29. During February 2010, an unlawful electronic funds transfer EFT was uncovered in a forensic report by Deloitte, in which 8.1 million rand was fraudulently transferred in the Durban and Tshwane regions, but no action was taken against those implicated in the transactions. 30. During the period 24 to 27 September 2009, Mr. Montana undertook a leisure trip in a blue train to Cape Town together with 10 female companions and returned in a South African Airways flight costing Prasa 17,000 rand. The total cost of the trip was allegedly an estimated 170,000, which constituted fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 31. During 2008-2009, the Executive Corporate Affairs Manager, Mr. P. Mabi, allegedly received salaries from Prasa despite having left its service, and Mr. Montana allegedly misled the EXCO and the Prasa board by saying that the employee was not on Prasa's payroll. 32. Prasa disregards the labor relations processes and conditions of employment when dealing with labor issues, thereby costing the entity enormous amounts of money that resulted in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. To this end, it is alleged that A. Mr. Stephen Gobeni, Mr. Montana's cousin in the employment of Prasa was improperly appointed as a training contractor to provide training services on the handling of people with disability. He was later allegedly improperly transferred without a disciplinary process being instituted against him. And B, Mr. Montana unlawfully engages yearly in a series of suspending employees perpetually with payment of salaries costing Prasa an estimated 3.35 million rand in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 33. The complainant further raised allegations of conflict of interest relating to the following members of the Prasa board. A member of the Prasa board, Dr. Bridget Gassa, who is also a director of ARUP, a company alleged to be contracted to provide advisory services to Prasa, and a director in another company that is also providing consultancy services to Prasa, is benefiting improperly in her involvement in these companies whilst serving as a member of the Prasa board, and this constitutes a conflict of interest. B, the chairman of the Prasa board, Mr. Sifisa Buthelezi, is alleged to be the chief executive officer of Makana, a subsidiary of Cadiz, a company allegedly providing advisory services to Prasa on the rolling stock recapitalization project. His alleged involvement is asserted to constitute a conflict of interest. And C, the wife of Mr. Bushielo was appointed as a general manager of Autopex without following proper recruitment processes during Mr. Bushielo's tenure as a member of the Prasa board. 34. During the year 2008-2009, Mr. Montana improperly appointed Mr. Chimanda as a special advisor at Prasa at a cost of 2 million. Without following proper recruitment processes and in contravention of the Prasa recruitment policy. 35. About 17 tenders contracts collectively exceeding 2.8 billion were specifically identified by the complainant for investigation of supply chain irregularities, including non-competitive processes, chronism, scope creep, cost overruns, overpayment, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Despite each complaint being a distinct matter worthy of a separate investigation, the 37 complaints were investigated collectively, thus forming one systemic investigation. The following issues were identified in respect of each complaint with a view to focusing the investigation. The first one was, did Prasa improperly extend to other stations nationally a tender for the installation of high-speed passenger gauge worth 800 million to CIA Technologies for the Doringfontein station, which was later extended to other stations nationally? 2. Did Prasa improperly extend the appointment of Siemens tender for the dark fiber and integrated communication systems amounting to 800 million to other stations nationally during the financial year 2010, when it was only advertised for Gauteng? On all of the 35 questions, basically we asked if Prasa had acted improperly. And there were two questions that we asked. It was the question whether it happened as alleged by the complainants, and the second question was whether the conduct in question violated any rule or prescript. I am jumping these questions because they are similar to the issues as raised by the complainants. So if you will permit me, I will go straight into how we conducted the investigation. The investigation included the sourcing and analysis of corporate documents pertaining to all of the impugned transactions, interviews and meetings with selected witnesses, and we also conducted research into the regulatory framework, which includes the Constitution, laws, Treasury regulations, and corporate policies at Prasa. In arriving at the findings, I have been guided by the standard approach adopted by the Public Protector South Africa as an institution, which simply involves asking what happened, what should have happened. Is there a discrepancy between what happened and what should have happened? If there is a discrepancy, does the conduct amount to improper conduct or maladministration? If there was indeed improper conduct or maladministration, what would be the appropriate remedial action? As customary, the question regarding what happened is a factual inquiry settled on the assessment of evidence and making a determination on a balance of probabilities. To arrive at a finding on what happened, the investigation, like all others, relied on oral and documentary submissions by the complainant and Prasa management. Prasa management was principally represented by the GCEO, Mr. Montana. Interviews and meetings were held primarily to clarify evidence already gathered. These were held with the complainant. When I'm talking about the complainant, I'm really talking about the complainant as a juristic person, NTM, but the voices that we spoke to were a group of people. We also spoke to Mr. Montana, assisted by his lawyers. I noticed that Mr. Makubela is here. And we spoke to the Prasa board, the previous one and the current board. The question regarding what should have happened, on the other hand, relates to the standard that the conduct in question should have complied with. In determining the standard that the GCEO and the other functionaries at Prasa should have complied with to avoid improper conduct or maladministration, I was guided, as is customary, by the Constitution, national legislation, and applicable policies, including corporate policies. Key among corporate policies that informed the investigation was the Prasa procurement and supply chain management policy. We also considered the delegation of authority document. The supply chain management policy approved in 2009 preceded the matters that are being investigated, and therefore was the main guiding instrument. It is a very comprehensive document. It commences with defining supply chain management and its purpose. It then affirms and commits to uphold Section 217 of the Constitution, setting the vision behind it and the standards to be upheld in state procurement or supply chain management processes. It sets the vision as including ensuring a fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective public procurement system. The SCM policy also roots itself in Treasury regulations regulating supply chain management. It further outlines the steps to be taken in pursuit of the procurement of goods and services within Prasa. Those steps cover demand management, contract administration, material management, disposal management, procurement strategy, and acquisition management. Also regulated are permissible deviations, which include agency and single source providers. The policy also deals with management of conflict of interest. The investigation was also guided by human resources policy to the extent that some allegations involved the appointment, promotion, and termination of employees, including executives. In this regard, Section 195 of the Constitution, setting a standard for all conduct in state affairs, was relied on to a great extent. To the extent that there was some reference to whistleblower victimization, or rather they alluded to whistleblower victimization, I took into account the provisions of the Protected Disclosures Act, number 26 of 2000. At the commencement of the investigation, the allegations were brought to the attention of Prasa management through the GCEO, Mr. Montana, the chairman of the Prasa board, and the then board of Prasa. Towards the final stages, the new board was engaged, including sharing of provisional findings with it and enlisting its support with regard to missing or conflicting information in the management submissions. All information and evidence gathered during interactions with the Prasa management and complainants were taken into account in an effort to reconstruct what happened and if what happened was in line with the rules. Parties implicated by the evidence gathered by the time a provisional report had been prepared were sent notices under Section 7(9) of the Public Protector Act, alerting them of evidence implicating them and the possibility of adverse findings. A discretionary notice was also sent to the complainant, alerting the members of the complainant to the allegations not supported by evidence. In all cases, responses were solicited and affected parties were given an opportunity to provide further information and to engage the investigation team via meetings. I must record that the investigation team and I had immense difficulty piecing together the truth, as information had to be clawed out of Prasa management. When information was eventually provided, it came in drips and drabs and was incomplete. Despite the fact that the means used to obtain information and documents from Prasa included a subpoena issued in terms of Section 7(4) of the Public Protector Act, many of the documents and information requested are still outstanding. So Prasa did respond to the subpoena, but some of the documents were not provided. Until about 3 weeks before issuing the report, Prasa was still being asked for outstanding documents and information on contracts awarded and some staff appointments. I must also indicate that the authenticity of many of the documents submitted by Prasa management as evidence, principally relating to procurement, is doubtful. Many of the memoranda for approval of tenders and related documents submitted by Prasa management were undated, unsigned, and at least in one case, incomplete. Examples in this regard include documents relating to the contracting of Vimtsiri Security, Arup, and Enlightened Security Services. In some of the cases, had this been an audit, only a disclaimer would have been a legitimate outcome. After unsuccessfully asking the new Prasa board and its chairman to assist, I decided it would be in the public interest to proceed with the report and defer unanswered questions to a second report. The second report has also been necessitated by further allegations of financial impropriety, corruption, and tender irregularities at Prasa, which came too late to be investigated and incorporated in this report. The issues covered in the original 37 complaints that have been deferred to the second report are the following. We have not investigated the following issues. Did Prasa improperly implement an upfront payment to a developer of the City Mall for the construction of an underground train station on the Bridge City project without proper authorization during the period 2008 to 2010? 2. Did Prasa improperly award a CCTV cameras tender to Mr. Vusi Twala? 3. Did Prasa improperly engage various construction companies in respect of 2010 Soccer World Cup projects? 4. Did Prasa improperly procure Umjanji House from Transnet in September 2009 by flouting supply chain management prescripts? 5. Did Prasa improperly appoint Ms. Sheila Bushielo, the wife of Mr. Bushielo, the former member of the Prasa board, as general manager of Autopex? 6. Did Mr. Montana improperly take a blue train trip to Cape Town together with 10 female companions during the period between 24 to 27 September 2009, returning by an SAA flight estimated at the cost of 170,000, and did such amount to fruitless and wasteful expenditure? Lastly, did Prasa improperly pay a salary to Mr. Mabi, former executive corporate affairs, during 2008 to 2009 after his resignation from Prasa, amounting to fruitless and wasteful expenditure? What is encouraging is that both Mr. Montana and the board have welcomed the provisional report, which did not differ vastly from this final report. They've committed themselves to implementing the remedial action once the report is made final. For this, I'm grateful, as such conduct is in line with the constitutional ideal regarding the relationship between the public protector and organs of state as envisaged in Section 181 of the Constitution. Section 181 enjoins organs of state to assist and protect the public protector and other institutions supporting constitutional democracy to ensure their effectiveness, among other things. After a careful examination of the evidence and information obtained during the investigation and the regulatory framework setting the standard that should have been upheld by Prasa, my findings are the following. 1. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper extension to other stations nationally, a tender for the installation of high-speed passenger gates worth 800 million rand to Siangena Technologies in 2009/2010, initially advertised for the Doringfontein station in Gauteng. My findings are the following. The allegation that Prasa improperly extended the scope of a tender awarded to Siangena Technologies for the supply and installation of high-speed passenger gates at Doringfontein Station to a national scope is substantiated. However, the total amount of the contract was 1.95 billion rand and not 800 million as alleged. The scope of a tender for high-speed passenger gates advertised for 2 train stations, which was Doornfontein and Nasrec, was awarded by the Prasa board to Siangena Technologies and later extended to cover additional stations on the basis of a closed bidding process with those that had bid for the 2 Gauteng stations. See, the extension of this tender scope beyond what had been advertised was in contravention of paragraph 11.32 of the Prasa supply chain management policy. It was also in contravention of section 38 of the PFMA, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, and section 217 of the Constitution, which all require a fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and effective bidding process. The extension of Siangena Technologies' contract to more stations than were specified in the tender advertised accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper extension of a tender awarded to Siemens for dark fiber and integrated communication systems, which is said to have cost 800 million and was extended to additional stations nationally during the financial year 2009-2010, although it was only advertised in Gauteng. My findings are the following. The allegation that Prasa improperly extended the scope and value of a tender awarded to Siemens for dark fiber and integrated communication systems beyond what was advertised and approved by the Corporate Tender Procurement Committee, with the effect of substantially increasing the contract price, is substantiated. However, the total contract amount was 256 million and not 800 million as alleged. Prasa improperly extended to Durban and Western Cape regions a tender for the design, supply, and installation of dark fiber and integrated communication systems, which had been advertised and won by Siemens for the Wits and Pretoria region, without following an open and competitive tender process. This was in contravention of paragraph 11.37 of Prasa SCM policy and section 217 of the Constitution, among others. See, the extension of the scope and price of the design, supply, and installation of the dark fiber integrated communication systems tender to other regions accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. 3. Prasa's alleged improper termination of all contracts for cleaning services and subsequent irregular appointment of Riachona, commercial and industry hygiene, and Katanga cleaning services. The allegation that Prasa improperly terminated the contracts of 7 cleaning companies and improperly replaced them with Riachona, commercial and industry hygiene, and Katanga cleaning services is substantiated. The contracts of 7 cleaning companies were summarily terminated by Mr. Montana on 14 March 2012 in contravention of paragraph 13.1 of the contracts entered between Prasa and the cleaning companies. Paragraph 13.1 prescribes a 48-hour notice to be given to the defaulting party to remedy a breach. He replaced them with Riachona and Katanga on 15 March 2012, whose services were procured without a transparent and competitive process. The conduct of Mr. Montana with regard to the summary termination of the contracts of 7 cleaning companies is also inconsistent with the provisions of the Prasa SCM policy, the PFMA, the Triple PFA, and Section 217 of the Constitution. Prasa's summary termination of the contracts of 7 cleaning companies and their irregular replacement with Riachona and Katanga accordingly constitutes maladministration, abuse of power, and improper conduct. The failure by Mr. Montana to afford the 7 cleaning companies an opportunity to explain themselves and possibly remedy the breach cannot be considered to be in line with Section 33 of the Constitution and the provisions of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. 4. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment of Sidus Security on a security tender in replacement of National Force Security on the GCEO's instruction, the allegation that Sidus Security was improperly appointed to replace National Force Security is substantiated. However, no evidence could be found to prove that the improper appointment was done on Mr. Montana's instructions. The month-to-month contract of National Force Security was terminated on 15 April 2009 and awarded to Sidus Security at the value of about 3.7 million rand. This was done by Mr. Chris Moloi without a tender process or competitive quotations being sought. The appointment was in contravention of paragraph 11.35 of the Prasa SCM policy and paragraph 4.7.51 of the National Treasury SCM guidelines of 2004. Prasa's failure to take action against the authorized official who approved the submission for the appointment of Sidus Security constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. 5. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment of the eNCA Security Services, which failed to meet the minimum requirements for appointment on tender number 525/2010/GAU/PS. The allegation that eNCA Security Services was improperly appointed while not meeting the requirement is substantiated. Prasa appointed eNCA Security Services on 2 contracts for this tender without an advertisement or competitive quotations. The first contract was signed on 23 February 2010 without specifying the period of the contract, and it was for an amount of about 4,596,480 rand. And the second contract was signed on 29 May 2010 for the period 13 March 2010 to 13 August 2010 for the amount of 7,537,680 rand. The contract was further extended by Prasa from 1st January 2011 to December 31, 2011 for an amount of 14,441,976 without a competitive process. The appointment and extension of the contract of eNCA Security amounting to 26,576,000 rand and 26 million, sorry. The amount was 26,576,126 rand. The appointment was unlawful and in contravention of paragraph 11.31 of the Prasa SCM policy. read with the document on delegation of authority and Section 217 of the Constitution, among others. The conduct of Prasa in appointing and extending the contract of eNCA security services irregularly accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. 6. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment and payment of royal security for an amount of 2.8 million for security services, the allegation that royal security was paid 2.8 million instead of 2.5 million stipulated in the contract was not substantiated. The documentary evidence shows that the amount paid by Prasa to royal security was 2.5 million rand. 7. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper advance payment of 600,000 to Enlightened Security, the allegation that Enlightened Security was irregularly given an advance payment of about 600,000 rand is substantiated. Prasa made a first payment of 684,720 rand to Enlightened Security for security services at Mapopane Station. This was done on the 22nd of October 2008, and the payment was preceded by an invoice dated 19 September 2008, which invoice was issued before the signing of the contract and before the issuing of a notice to proceed, which notice to proceed was only issued on 17 October 2008. Mr. John Ngobo's conduct in making advance payments to Enlightened Security accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Prasa management became aware of this violation but took no disciplinary steps against the manager responsible, being Mr. John Ngobo. Despite initially commencing a disciplinary process, this conduct is in violation of the accounting officer's responsibility under Section 38 of the PFMA and is accordingly irregular and constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. 8. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment of a media company to produce Hambanati magazine during 2008 to 2009, the allegation that Prasa improperly appointed a media company to produce Hambanati is substantiated. Prasa entered into a contract, referred to it as a partnership with KG Media, providing for the publication and distribution of Prasa information to its commuters and stakeholders through Kwela Express. Kwela Express used to be a corporate magazine of Metro Rail, a subsidiary of Prasa. At that time, it used the name Hambanati, and Mr. Pule Mabi, who at the time of Prasa entering into this contract was the owner of Kwela Express, had been employed by Prasa when Kwela Express or Hambanati was a corporate magazine of Metro Rail. The contract was from April 2012 to April 2015. My apology. A new contract has since was entered by, the first contract was entered by Prasa from April 2012 to 2015, and this was for a 3-year period. The amount was 465,669 rand per month. This translates into about 5.5 million per year, and the contract amount for 3 years is 16.7 million. This was done without a transparent bid process. Mr. Montana extended the contract in March 2015, this year, for a further 3 years at 6.764 million. This was despite a forewarning through a notice issued in terms of Section 7(9) of the Public Protector Act that the arrangement was likely to be determined to be unlawful. Effectively, Prasa is renting space on Hambanati or Kwela for the price of about 465,669 rand a month. Considering the fact that Prasa created Hambanati or Kwela and simply failed to register it as a patent, I find the arrangement with Mr. Mabi's company, KG Media, rather bizarre. The appointment of KG Media without a competitive bidding process did not comply with requirements for single sourcing or any of the permissible procurement processes prescribed in the Prasa supply chain management policy. As production of a corporate newsletter is not an exclusive skills area or an exclusive product for KG Media. And paragraph 11.33 of the Prasa policy, SEM policy, prohibits unsolicited bids. Prasa's appointment and extension of the contracts with KG Media for the Hambanati magazine totaling an amount of 33.5 million is unlawful. It's a flagrant contravention of Prasa's own supply chain policy. It violates Treasury regulations, the PFMA, and Section 217 of the Constitution. It also constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Mr. Montana's recent extension of the Hambanati contract, while being aware that there was going to be a finding regarding the Hambanati contract, and he had also asked for an extension of time to respond to a Section 7(9) notice, I believe that his conduct in this regard was an act of bad faith, which is inconsistent with his responsibilities under Section 195 of the Constitution, requiring a high standard of professional ethics, and which, according to the Constitutional Court in Kumalo versus MSC for Education KwaZulu-Natal, imposes on him a duty to correct an irregularity once his attention has been drawn to it. His actions in this regard constitute gross maladministration and improper conduct. Such conduct is not only unlawful, but also displays disconcerting disregard for the rule of law. 9. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment of Mr. Ezra Ndwande on a change management consultancy at the cost of 2 million in 2008/9, the allegation that Mr. Montana improperly appointed Mr. Ezra Ndwande is substantiated. However, it is the consultancy, not the person, that was appointed. And the amount involved was 10.8 million, basically, for 12 months. Ndwandwe Consultancy was appointed by Mr. Montana for the value creation and culture change process at Prasa on 14 June 2008 for the amount of 6,220,800 rand without requiring 3 quotations from suppliers in the Prasa database as prescribed in paragraph 11.3.11 of the Prasa SEM policy. The contract was extended for a further 6 months with the contract amount variation of 4.6 million exceeding 40%. The appointment of Ndwandwe Consultancy by Mr. Montana was unlawful. It was in contravention of Prasa's own SEM policy, Treasury regulations on procurement, the PFMA, and Section 217 of the Constitution, and accordingly constitutes improper conduct and maladministration. From the evidence, it is clear that Mr. Ndwandwe's consultancy's appointment was triggered by an existing relationship, which had included an excursion that took place immediately before the impugned contract was initiated. It is also clear that no process was followed to establish if any other agency offered similar services. More importantly, no demand management exercise preceded the engagement. Unfortunately, the investigation did not examine what the excursion mentioned in the procurement memorandum dated 16 September 2008 was for, and whether Prasa paid for it, and how Mr. Ndwandwe's consultancy had been procured. The conduct constitutes improper conduct and maladministration. And regarding Prasa's alleged improper increase of the scope and value of a marketing and communications tender awarded to brand leadership, the allegation that Prasa improperly increased the scope and price of a marketing and communications tender awarded to brand leadership is substantiated. However, the tender price and price variation amount were actually higher than alleged. The scope of the tender recommended by the Prasa Bid Adjudication Committee at the value of 12 million rand was increased beyond the advertised scope to 29,528,000 rand. This was done by Prasa's tender committee when it awarded it without the accounting officer's approval. The project timeline was also stretched by an additional 6 months. The project initially ran from October 2009 to September 2010. It was extended to March 2011. In increasing the scope and price of the advertising tender in excess of what was advertised and without approval by the GCEO, the conduct of Prasa the conduct of Prasa's tender committee was in contravention of the Prasa supply chain management policy, National Treasury SCM guidelines, and these guidelines set out a proper process for demand management. They also set out a process to be followed in extending the scope of a contract. The conduct of Prasa was accordingly improper and constitutes maladministration. 11. Regarding the Prasa GCEO's alleged improper appointment of Mr. Edwin Lekota on a tender amounting to 10 million for the development of a contingency emergency preparedness program for Metro Rail, my findings are the following. A, the allegation that Prasa improperly appointed Mr. Edwin Lekota on a tender is substantiated. Mr. Lekota's Lecha Investment Holdings was appointed directly by Prasa for the ISO 9001-2000 compliance work without a competitive process. I'm unable to accept Mr. Montana's submission that the appointment of Mr. Lekota, who was a former CEO of Prasa's predecessor, the South African Rail Commuter Commission, I'm unable to accept the submission that he was a member of a panel with Mr. Chris Stratton and Friedel Malk as part of a board of inquiry which had been appointed in terms of the GCEO's powers. The evidence shows that Carindale was awarded a contract to deal with the emergency arising from the banning of trains in Soshanguve in the city of Tshwane. However, The same evidence shows that Mr. Lekota was subcontracted by Carondale to deal with the burning of the trains. This contract was a different contract to the one that the complainants were complaining about. However, I'm encouraged by Mr. Montana's undertaking in his response to the provisional findings to ensure that such experts are in future invited to be part of an existing panel of experts in the Prasa database. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper award of a tender to Umjanji Consortium for the media advertising and broadcasting concession agreement, I have deferred my findings on this complaint as Prasa is yet to submit some of the bid documents, key being the tender documents submitted by Umjanji Consortium, which need to be subjected to a forensic examination. Evidence uncovered so far confirms that on 31 January 2011, Mr. Montana awarded the media and broadcasting services tender to Umjanji Consortium, an entity led by ProVantage Media, which is apparently the only constituent part of Umjanji Consortium that attended the compulsory briefing session for the tender on 22 February 2010. Just to explain that, is that the tender was awarded to a consortium which did not exist at the time the compulsory briefing took place, and only one of the companies that eventually formed the consortium attended the compulsory briefing, being Umjanji Consortium. Umjanji Consortium was not in existence at the time of the closure of the tender on 11 March 2010. Regarding the GCO's alleged improper awarding of a contract for the provision of professional advisory services on the signaling project to a friend, Mr. Makensa Mabunda, or CIABD, no evidence was found substantiating that Mr. Mabunda was or is Mr. Montana's friend, and that such friendship informed his company's appointment. Mr. Montana did appoint CIABD, which scored slightly lower than Mott McDonald on the tender HO/INF/203/06 2010. The tender was for the rendering of technical assistance and supervision for the National Signaling Project. The award of the tender followed an open, competitive tender process. I have accepted the reason given by Prasa that the highest bidder failed to meet its requirements relating to pricing certainty and BEE compliance as both cogent as rational. I'm accordingly unable to find that the award of the tender to CIABD by Mr. Montana or Prasa constitutes maladministration or improper conduct. 14. Regard Prasa's alleged improper awarding of a tender in the amount of 22 million for Park Station Development Framework to Arup, a company associated with its board member. The allegation that Arup was improperly awarded a tender for the Park Station Development Framework is substantiated. However, the amount involved was much less than the alleged 22 million. It was 3,898,940 rand. And this amount did not require board approval. Prasa considered that a proper procurement process was not followed in the appointment of Arup and took action against the persons implicated in the appointment concerned. I accordingly do not see the need to make a finding of maladministration or improper conduct. The aspect relating to a board member's alleged involvement is addressed separately. Regarding Prasa's alleged failure to investigate the theft of buses of its subsidiary, Autopex, the allegation that Prasa improperly failed to investigate the theft of buses of its subsidiary, Autopex, is not substantiated. Records show that Prasa conducted an investigation and internally disciplinary hearings regarding the theft of the Autopex buses, leading to the suspension of one employee and the dismissal of another. Furthermore, cases were registered with the South African Police Services in respect of the theft of the buses, and there were regular follow-up activities. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper awarding of a security services contract to Futuris Guarding in April 2010 at Autopex City to City for a total amount of 23,404 rand. The allegation that Futuris Guarding was improperly appointed is substantiated. However, the amount involved was higher than alleged. It was about 10.6 million rand for a 6-month contract. Although security unarguably involves danger, as envisaged in agency provisions of paragraph 11.35 of the Prasa SCM policy, the implementation of agency procurement failed to comply with the procedure laid out in the Prasa SCM policy, in that the deviation was not ratified or approved by the GCO. I consider this deviation material. The actions of Mr. Joe Buthelezi, acting supply chain manager, in the appointment of Futuris Guarding on a security contract on confinement without the GCEO's approval, constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Prasa's failure to take disciplinary action against Mr. Buthelezi for the appointment of Futuris Guarding constitutes improper conduct and maladministration. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper termination of the Rasa Kanya Builders contract on November 2012, my findings are the following. The allegation that Prasa improperly terminated the contract of Rasa Kanya Builders is not substantiated. Proper terminated its month-to-month contract with Rasa Kanya Builders on 28 September 2008 with effect from 1st November 2012, giving it a month's notice. I could not find any impropriety with the termination, and accordingly am unable to find that Prasa's conduct constitutes maladministration or improper conduct. Regarding the GCEO or Prasa's alleged improper implementation of an advance payment of an amount of 80 million for FIFA World Cup sponsorship without proper approval budget or allocated funds, thus constituting fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The allegation that Prasa made an advance payment in the amount of 80 million to FIFA without proper approval, budget, or allocated funds, which resulted in fruitless and wasteful expenditure, is not substantiated. 19. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper incurring of an over-expenditure of 2.2 billion on Prasa's operations budget in 2009-10 financial year, my finding is the following. The allegation that Prasa improperly incurred an over-expenditure is substantiated. However, the amount involved was far less than alleged. It was 523,792 rand, 767. The Prasa exceeded its budget by this amount for the year 2010 financial year. 20. Prasa's alleged failure to spend a subsidy of 500 million received for Shoshooloza mail for the year 2009-10 period and not use it for its intended purpose. My finding is the following. The allegation that Prasa failed to spend the subsidy received for Shoshooloza mail for 2009-10 financial year is not substantiated. Prasa received a government subsidy of 450 million for the year 2009-10 for Shoshooloza mail. I'm unable to confirm if the subsidy was indeed used for its intended purpose, as the operational expenditure for Shoshooloza mail was not reflected separately in the overall budget, but should also indicate that there was no evidence suggesting that the money was used for anything else. 21. Regarding Prasa's alleged incurring of rental expenditure for Jorison Building after it 20 months before the expiry of its lease, resulting in fruitless and wasteful expenditure, my finding is the following. The allegation that Prasa improperly incurred rental expenditure, which constitutes fruitless and wasteful expenditure due to vacating the Jorrison building before the expiry of its lease agreement, is substantiated. On the authority of Mr. Montana, Prasa paid rental for a vacant office properly. On the authority of Mr. Montana, Prasa paid rental for a vacant office property, number 66 Jorrison Street, Braamfontein, Johannesburg, for 20 months after vacating it. And this was done before the expiry of the lease agreement, and Prasa failed to exercise its option to sublet the building. The hasty vacation of Jorrison's Place building, resulting in full payment of rent for unused lettable space for 20 months, cannot be consistent with the efficiency and cost-effective dictates expected in state affairs under Section 195 of the Constitution and the standards set for proper handling of public funds under the PFMA, particularly Section 51 thereof. The actions of Prasa management and its board regarding the move to Mjanji House and payment for the vacant premises for about 20 months and failing to mitigate the loss by subletting the premises amounts to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper incurring of rental expenditure on intersite building after vacating the building 10 months before the expiry of its lease, resulting in fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the allegation that Prasa improperly incurred rental expenditure and the consequent fruitless and wasteful expenditure due to vacating intersite building before the expiry of its lease is substantiated. Prasa vacated the intersite building about 10 months before the expiry date and continued with rental payments for the building, for the vacant building, until the expiry of the lease. The conduct of Prasa accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding the GCO's termination of contracts of executives resulting in fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounting to an estimated 5 million, my findings are the following. The allegation that Mr. Montana improperly terminated the services of 5 of his executives mentioned in paragraph 6.1221 of this report is substantiated. Mr. Montana terminated the services of 5 executives during 2008 to 2013 without following proper procedures as provided for in paragraph 4.4 of Prasa's disciplinary code and procedure. This resulted in the CCMA overturning some of the terminations and others being settled out of court at cost to Prasa. Prasa subsequently paid labor dispute settlements amounting to about 3.8 million, principally due to the procedural irregularities in the disciplinary steps taken against involved officials, which payments can be said to constitute fruitless and wasteful expenditure as envisaged in Section 38, subsection 1C, Roman figure 2 of the PFMA. The failure by Prasa to follow its corporate disciplinary procedures and labor laws relating to procedural fairness constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding the GCEO's alleged improper suspension of employees resulting in labor dispute settlements amounting to 3.35 million, thus constituting fruitless and wasteful expenditure, my findings are the following. The allegation that the GCEO suspended employees without following proper disciplinary procedures is substantiated in respect of some of the employees, as others were not suspended by him. Prasa suspended 7 employees without following proper procedure as provided for in the Labor Relations Act and paragraph 11 of its disciplinary code and procedure, leading to loss of approximately 2 million in wages during their suspension period. The case studies regarding the 7 officials mentioned in paragraph 6.28.23 of the report support the conclusion that a pattern of habitual suspensions for period exceeding 36 days without following proper procedure existed at Prasa. The conduct of Prasa in habitually suspending employees was in contravention of paragraph 11.1 of its disciplinary code and procedure, which provides that the employer has the right to suspend an employee with pay for a period not exceeding 30 calendar days, and also in contravention of paragraph 4.4 of Prasa disciplinary code and procedure, and Schedule 1, Part 4 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which provides that employment practices shall ensure employment fairness. It is not unreasonable to draw a nexus between the payment of salaries for staff sitting at home with pay for long periods of time and failure to manage employment relations appropriately, and the conclusion that the payment of salaries without any value derived therefrom is irregular and constitutes fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Prasa's conduct in this regard amounts to fruitless and wasteful expenditure in contravention of the provisions of Section 38(1)(c), Roman figure 2, read with Section 51, subsection B, Roman figure 2 of the PFMA, whilst being at odds with the financial prudence and efficiency requirements of Section 195 of the Constitution. The conduct of Prasa regarding suspension of employees accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding the allegation that the then Prasa Board Chairman, Mr. Sifiso Buthelezi, failed to disclose and manage a conflict of interest arising from his interest in Marikana, a subsidiary, Makana, a subsidiary of Cadiz, a company allegedly providing advisory services to Prasa on the rolling stock program. My findings are the following. The evidence regarding the allegation that Mr. Buthelezi, the then chairman of Prasa Board, improperly failed to disclose and manage a conflict of interest arising from his interest in Makana, a subsidiary of Cadiz, a company alleged to be providing advisory services to Prasa, is inconclusive. The documents have not been provided by Prasa, whose GCEO only offered an explanation disputing the allegation and providing the names of companies involved in the said advisory services. Accordingly, I have deferred my findings on this allegation, and it will be dealt with in the second report. Regarding a similar allegation that Dr. Bridget Gasa failed to disclose and manage a conflict of interest arising from her interest in Arup and her directorship in another company providing consultancy services to Prasa, my findings are the following. Allegation that the then Prasa Board member, Dr. Bridget Gasa, failed to disclose and manage a conflict of interest arising from her appointment to the board, while two companies she had an interest in provided services to Prasa, is not substantiated. While Dr. Gasa was indeed a director of Arup from the 9th of February 2011, she made the necessary disclosure to Prasa on 20 July 2011, resigned on 15 May 2012, and when making her disclosure on 10 October 2012, excluded Arup as she no longer was a board member. See, Arup South Africa was indeed awarded a contract by Prasa for the Park Station Development Framework on 21 June 2012. However, the contract was for 3.8 million, which would not have required board approval. 27. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper appointment of Ms. Sheila Bushielo, wife of then board member Mr. Bushielo, as the general manager of Autopax, my findings are the following. I have deferred my finding on the alleged nepotism regarding the appointment of Ms. Bushielo, as Prasa has failed to provide the selection and appointment memoranda and some of the other relevant documents. In his initial response, Mr. Montana, in Prasa's initial response, Mr. Montana stated on behalf of Prasa that Ms. Bushielo was appointed on 6 April 2010 through a headhunting process. Later, in response to the provisional findings, Mr. Montana turned around to state that the submission was a mistake, as Ms. Bushielo was appointed through a recruitment and selection process and was selected from amongst other candidates, but repeatedly failed to honor requests to provide the recruitment and selection documents to substantiate the assertion. 28, regarding the GCO's alleged improper appointment of Mr. Joel Chimanda at a cost of 2 million as a special advisor, my findings are the following. The allegation that Mr. Montana improperly appointed Mr. Chimanda for advisory services is substantiated. However, it was Mr. Chimanda's company, AR Chimanda Consulting, that was contracted for 1.9 million on a monthly retainer of about 150,000. This makes the appointment a procurement contract and not an employment contract. This is so because a juristic person cannot be an employee. Therefore, the contract is incapable of being defended under the GCEO's powers to appoint special advisors, as Mr. Montana attempted to do in his submissions. See, the appointment of Mr. Chimanda's company was not preceded by a competitive bid process, nor is he offering exclusive specialized services entitling him to be the sole provider in terms of the provisions of the Prasa SCM policy. The conduct of Mr. Montana in appointing AR Chimanda Consulting is accordingly in contravention of the SCM policy, the PFMA, the Triple PFA, and Section 217 of the Constitution. The conduct of Mr. Montana accordingly constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding Prasa's alleged improper replacement of the group executive HR with the GCEO's uncle, Mr. Mpefu Ramutla, without following proper recruitment process, the allegation that Mr. Mpefu Ramutla was improperly appointed in replacement of group executive HR by Prasa is not substantiated. No evidence could be found to support the allegation that Mr. Mpefu Ramutla is Mr. Montana's uncle. Regarding Prasa's alleged failure to take disciplinary action against staff members allegedly involved in fraudulent electronic funds transfers amounting to 8.1 million, my findings are the following. The allegation that Prasa failed to take disciplinary action against employees involved in the fraudulent electronic financial transfers of its funds from its corporate bank account is partially substantiated. Action was taken against one of the 6 employees found responsible by a Deloitte forensic investigation for security lapses that led to the fraudulent EFT transfers of Prasa funds amounting to 8.1 million in its KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng bank accounts. Prasa took action against a certain Ms. Pailaya, but inexplicably failed to take disciplinary action against the other 5 individuals recommended for possible disciplinary action. The recommendation that 6 employees should be considered for disciplinary action is in paragraph 13.3 of the Deloitte report of 26 February 2010. The conduct of Mr. Montana regarding failure to take disciplinary action against the other 5 employees constitutes maladministration and improper conduct. Regarding Mr. Montana's alleged improper taking of a blue train trip to Cape Town together with 10 female companions during the period between 24 September to 27 September 2009 and returned by SSAA flight at an estimated cost of 170,000 and and possible fruitless and wasteful expenditure, my findings are the following. The evidence regarding this issue is inconclusive. While the photographic evidence received from the complainant apparently places Mr. Montana on the train and a hotel with women companions, he has denied the allegation but referred to a different trip. I have deferred my findings on this allegation and it will be dealt with in the second report. 32, Mr. Montana's alleged improper transferring of Mr. Stephen Ngobeni without a disciplinary process being followed for his alleged irregular appointment of a training contractor to provide training services on the handling of people with disability. My findings are the following. I have deferred my finding on the alleged failure by Mr. Montana to take disciplinary action against Mr. Stephen Ngobeni, as Prasa has failed to provide the necessary documents relating to the issue. No evidence was found in support of the allegation that Mr. Ngobeni is Mr. Montana's cousin. My finding on this matter will be included in the second report. Under paragraph 33, I make general observations, and the general observations are the following. The transactions investigated and related findings reveal a culture of systemic failure to comply with the SCM policy, particularly involving failure to plan for bulk procurement, test the market appropriately for competitive pricing, and to manage contracts, which culture may have cost Prasa millions in avoidable expenditure and preventable disruption of services. There also seems to be a culture of either poor information management or hiding of information that could provide evidence of maladministration and other forms of improper conduct. If the person is not arrested, it has the potential to derail the effective and efficient procurement of goods and services to support Prasa operations and consequently service delivery by this important national asset. Poor financial management also has implications for the national revenue, as it may mean frequent yet preventable rescue funding. Regarding Prasa's failure to provide information, it must be appreciated that public accountability via administrative bodies such as the Public Protector is not accountability to complainants but to the public that entrusts public functionaries with public power and resources. It is accordingly not open to public functionaries to try and win a case by withholding or hiding information. The remedial action I take in terms of Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution is to require the following. The Minister of Transport is to take cognizance of the findings regarding the unethical conduct and maladministration by Prasa relating to the irregularities mentioned in the report, and show that the Prasa Board considers the report and, where appropriate, acts in terms of Section 84 and as contemplated in Section 85 of the PFMA. Ensure that the Prasa Board considers the acts of maladministration and improper conduct referred to in paragraph 8 of this report and takes appropriate disciplinary action against the officials of Prasa in respect of their conduct referred to therein. Include in her oversight activities with regard to Prasa as a state-owned enterprise, the monitoring of implementation of remedial action taken in pursuit of the findings in terms of powers conferred under Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution. The chairman of Prasa Board is to ensure the following. 1, the Prasa Board takes cognizance of the findings of the maladministration. The Prasa Board takes cognizance of the findings of maladministration and improper conduct by Mr. Montana and other functionaries at Prasa. and takes or ensures that appropriate disciplinary action is taken against responsible officials where it considers appropriate. 2. The Prasa board evaluates the effectiveness of Prasa's internal controls on supply chain management and human resources processes to identify systemic deficiencies with a view to take corrective action to prevent a recurrence of the improprieties referred to in this report. 3. The Prasa board reviews the Prasa SEM policy regarding the 350 million threshold value for competitive bidding process of procurement of goods and services. I must just indicate that Prasa did mention to us that the 350 million is a mistake, but we would prefer that that figure is removed from the document so that everyone understands that the threshold for procurement without a tender process is not 350 million. 4. The Prasa board reports to the National Treasury and the Auditor General particulars of the alleged financial misconduct and the steps taken in connection with such financial misconduct as contemplated in Section 85 of the PFMA. The Prasa board is to commission the National Treasury to conduct a forensic investigation into all Prasa contracts above 10 million since 2012 and to take measures to address any findings regarding systemic administrative deficiencies allowing ongoing maladministration and related improprieties in its procurement system. I must just indicate that we did speak to Treasury, and Treasury is willing to assist Prasa if Prasa would like to be assisted. The acting GCEO of Prasa is required to do the following: should ensure that Prasa adopts a monitoring system that ensures that procurement processes and HR processes are followed on appointing service providers and individuals. Ensure that Prasa reviews the existing policy or the policy provisions on managing conflict of interest to ensure there is no confusion regarding expectations from employees and board members. 3. Together with the board, review the entire Prasa SCM policy, in particular Clause 11.3 of the policy. 4. To ensure that prior to signing a formal contract or service level agreement with the contractor, it must ensure that such contracts or agreements are legally sound to avoid potential litigation and to minimize possible fraud and corruption. This must include legal vetting by at least the legal services of the agency. Such contracts or agreements must be actively managed in order to ensure that both the agency and the contractors meet their respective obligations. 5. To ensure that there is compliance with paragraph 11.1 of the Disciplinary Code and Procedure of Metro Rail to avoid prolonged and costly suspension of employees. The National Treasury's Chief Procurement Officer is being asked to do the following: in consultation with the Prasa board, consider commissioning a forensic investigation on all Prasa contracts or tenders valued above 10 million issued between the 1st of April 2012 and 30 June 2015. The terms of reference to be approved by the Public Protector and to include a forensic examination of all suspected or alleged corrupt relationships. The Public Protector is to be kept abreast of the progress of the investigation and favored with the final report. We have also indicated the monitoring mechanisms that we've put in place, which includes implementation plans to be submitted and various activities to be executed within defined time frames. Thank you for your audience.
Thank you, Public Protector. We will now start the Q&A session by show of hands. Just remember to identify yourself by name and the media house that you represent. I see a hand at the back, one in front. Two. You will be number 3. More, okay. Let's start there at the back. Yes.
I just have a question around these follow-up matters that you have been mentioning now throughout the report. Regarding the follow-up matters, are they limited to those issues, or have such issues, for instance, the 51 billion rand Prasa tender for Alstom's passenger railway coaches, would such contracts also form part of the scope of what you are looking at, or does that automatically go to the Treasury investigation of contracts above 10 billion rand? And then secondly, I just wanted to get the Public Protector's Office, the Office of the Public Protector's stance on how individuals at Prasa have been treating your attempt to get clarity on these issues in terms of not providing the assistance in this kind of in your probe, and just what that means for an institution like the Public Protector and individuals not providing their assistance.
Thank you.
Yes. Public Protector Karen Ward from eNCA. You've suggested that there be a look at, by the board, about possible violations of the Public Finance Management Act. Would you believe that there would be a case, a criminal case, against particularly Lucky Montana in terms of alleged violations of that act? And do you believe that there is any kind of scope for criminal investigations into what's happened here? You've also asked the Treasury examine alleged or suspected corrupt relationships in their forensic audit of Prasa. What informed that request? Do you believe that what's the basis for you asking that be part of the investigation?
You also say that the hiding of information could have provided evidence. Are your findings conclusive, and why do you use the word may and could? Thank you.
Let me call for this. Okay, Miss Taylor, let me start with yours whilst I still remember it. Why are we using may and could about the possibility that Prasa may have lost money, and the whole question of possibility of corrupt relationships? Because we did not investigate that aspect conclusively, and to make a definitive statement would be improper, although there were signs, of course, that were showing that some money have been lost through failure to ensure proper demand management, and then going to the field when you already know what the market looks like, and making sure that you don't give the market a blank check. So it's something that we think Treasury could look into, because we didn't slice deep enough to excavate that kind of information. Ms. Mayberg, what about new matters? We're trying not to investigate the new matters. No, sorry, Mr. Mayberg says sorry. We're trying not to investigate new matters. A lot of those tenders are part of the new allegations that have been presented to this office. So we have several allegations on new tenders. Our concern is that because we are such a small team, some of these things you want to nip them in the bud, so to speak. And we have worked with Treasury before. When we referred the IEC tender to Treasury, Treasury procured a competent agency to conduct the investigation, and they did a proper forensic, not something that calls itself a forensic when it's not a forensic. And we are hoping that the same will happen. And we've gotten an indication that Treasury is willing to assist, because obviously anything that can potentially save money is something they can assist with. Regarding people not providing us with information, again in the report I've indicated that I'm not sure at this stage whether there is hiding of information or improper information management. We need to look more closely at that. But we do know that there were submissions where we were told one thing on the written submission, but the documents submitted to back what was being said, we're telling a different story. We've given examples there where what was said was not backed by the document. So that has worried us. But again, we are leaving it as a may until we conclude these outstanding matters. We have the power to subpoena, and we did subpoena information from Prasa. The next stage would have been to then go for what in Pakistan is referred to as defiance proceedings. From our side, it would be contempt proceedings. And I did seriously consider a contempt proceedings against Prasa. But when we weighed it with the team, we thought, why not conclude this investigation? At least have something on the table, because going for the contempt proceedings will be another process and opening a totally different struggle ground. We also do have the power to search and seize, which we can easily use, of course, using a court of law, and that is something that we also considered, but decided at this stage that we will work with the board. The board did try to assist us. We haven't found out from the chairperson or from the chairman, because Prasa's legislation calls him the chairman. We haven't found out what really is the impediment. Is the information missing, or is the information being hidden? We don't really know. And then Ms. Moon, can you please clarify the question again?
Do you think that there's a case to be made, or there should be a possible criminal investigation against Mr. Montana over potential violations of the public finance management?
Right. Thank you. Ms. Moon, we try not to rush into the criminal side of things. You did ask whether we suspected that there may be corrupt relationships. There is suspicion. The allegations are pointing to several relationships, and the only way we could have determined that those allegations are wild and unsubstantiated if we were given proper tender documents where we can find out, for example, in Janji House, there was one company that attended the briefing meeting. And then out of the blue, it then gets partners. I do have information indicating who are those partners, but I choose not to disclose that right now because that information was not given to us by Prasa. We've had to do research on our own to find the information. So we don't know why are we not getting this information? Because we then need to find out who are those people, when were the companies formed, what was their experience before they got that tender. We have learned from some of the investigations that we've done that the fact that the company scored the highest means nothing. We've done at least 3 investigations where we knew that the scoring was rigged. It was docked vessels, poisoned process, and on the point of tenders. So because of that experience, we prefer to get the bid documents and go through everything. And we will probably do it ourselves on the matters outstanding on our own plate, but we would rather, if Treasury wants to do everything, we would hand over to Treasury to conclude the process, as long as we can determine the terms of reference, because we know what needs to be found out.
Thank you, Protector. Are there further questions? Right. I see one hand. I've seen the second one in front. 3 and 4. Right, we start at the back.
Mr. Chaba from Switzerland. You are saying in the reports that the handling of financing includes use of goods and services. The implication for the efficient and effective public transport. Can you please explain as to how this is handled, this meeting of financing? After that, on the explain this impact on the service branches for those who are using the general public and part of the public who are using Prasa services. That's what we
Okay, that's next. Yes, I got the question. I just didn't get your name, sir. Oh, yes, thank you. I didn't see you going that far. Thank you.
I think Prasa. Good afternoon. My name is Ted Omwai from SABC. I think the first question is, who was the first complainant to come forward? Secondly is, I know you said that there's more need for more clarity on the figure, but for now, what can we say is the figure related to the tenders that were irregularly awarded?
Thank you, sir. Proceed.
My name is Morafe Tabani, SABC Radio News. Public Protector, given some of the challenges that you came across whilst investigating this matter, and also just given the time that goes into investigating a matter like this, when are you likely to release the second report where some of the deferred matters will be looked into?
Thank you, Mr. Van. Do we have another question? Oh, it's not.
Hi, I'm Public Protector. Sorry to go back to this again, but I think in about a third of the incidents that you examined, Mr. Lucky Montana was involved. And it very much appears that he hired and fired people at will, that there were in some instances suspensions that he carried out which had financial consequences for Prasa. And, you know, there's other matters that you're still investigating. What legally is available now to Prasa, or in terms against Lucky Montana? He's no longer an employee of that organization. Is he now unaccountable because he's resigned? What are the legal options available, particularly given your concerns that there may have been violations of the Public Finances Management Act? And second of all, you know, I know that you're very, very reticent about, you know, suggesting that people may be involved in criminality, but your overall impression from the withholding of the information, from the fact that in your experience it seems that, you know, tender documents, which this is a government entity, they should be accountable in a profound form for the spending of public money, given that there seems to have been at least a concerted campaign to withhold information or to not properly manage information that is incredibly important to the accountability of that institution, to ordinary tax-paying people. Are you not left with the feeling that either people are deliberately hiding things or they simply don't care that public taxpayer money needs to be accounted for, and they've gotten away with this for so long that your investigation somehow threw them for a loop? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Oh, that was the last one. Thank you. Let's start with Mr. Kaba. The mishandling of goods and services, as we indicated in the code from the Constitutional Court, can primarily affect socio-economic rights. And that's what the Constitutional Court said in All Pay Consolidated Investment Holdings, Pty Ltd versus Chief Executive Officer of the South African Social Security Agency. There are many ways in which improper handling of public finances impacts on service delivery. The first one is the issue of efficiency. If you go into contracts or tenders without following due process, you risk being sued and the process then being derailed or delayed. And then you will not then be able to proceed with the service. You may be constructing something, you may be trying to purchase a building or something like that. So the first thing that companies are warned, or organs of state are warned to try and avoid, is to enter into a contract where the risk of being successfully sued is high because you missed a step. The second danger that we picked up is the potential of overpricing. Because if you don't go into the open market as required by Section 217 of the Constitution and required by the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act and the PFMA, you go to a single provider. You are captured by that person. The person determines how much you're going to pay for something. So I make statements in the report where I say, we will never know whether we got value for money. For example, you start with a contract that was meant for 2 stations. Those in business will know that when it's not bulk purchasing, people tend to charge high per unit because of the heavy capital outlay for small-scale projects. But for large-scale projects, you'll know that the capital outlay is going to be absorbed, and then you then charge less per unit. But here then you go for these tenders that start with small scale. So the per capita cost was charged as a small scale project. It then gets extended. When we look at those tenders now that we extended, for example, the one for high-speed gates, we could not understand why a tender that was going to cost this little for 2 stations When it gets extended to 7, it now costs 1.9 billion rand. The anomaly could not be explained. And obviously, you would have to go back to the market and test the market and see what went wrong there. Were the other stations much bigger? It just didn't add up for us. But again, because we didn't investigate it conclusively, that's why we're talking about May. There are all of these possibilities. So there's overbilling, there's overcharging, and when you hire people in confinement. But lastly, you may also not get the best skills available, because you might get the first person you know to provide you with the service, and they might not be the best, and they may do a shoddy job, as we've seen with RDP housing. I don't know if Mr. Kaba, that is helpful for you. It's project delays, project overpricing, and all of those things. Yes, sir.
On how does it affect ordinary people as
Well, the Gogo Dlamini is affected when the fair, competitive, and cost economic process provided for in Section 217 of the Constitution is ignored. Gogo Dlamini suffers. In that, if, for example, there was money to, let's say for argument's sake, that 1.9 billion could potentially have done 20 stations, and it only did 7. Again, here I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying we'll never know because we didn't go to an open process. But that means then why they wanted the high-speed gates, they say they are safer because from a security point of view, that was one of the requirements initially of 2010. So that's but more than anything else, you've seen in the report, sir, that we talk a little bit about who is Prasa. Prasa is a state-owned enterprise. If you go to many Asian countries, state-owned enterprises are not the ones that eat money from the state revenue system. They actually bring money to the state revenue system. And in the period that we have been looking into, Prasa has been getting money from the state revenue system. So it's not able to generate its own money. But a lot of it was, from what we saw here, was that problem of not doing demand management, which is prescribed in the SCM policy. There's a very clear process there that you decide upfront what you want to procure on a long time plane. You test the market to see who are the potential service providers and what is competitive pricing, and that was not happening. Scope creep eats money that would have been set aside for something else. It then ends up going into this project. So those are the things that we've mentioned. Again, we're saying these are potential pitfalls because we haven't fully investigated whether or not Prasa here lost a lot of money. We suspect it did. We don't know if for sure it did. I mean, a lot of those consultancies, the amounts involved are not normal. Then Mr. Tsepo Mungwa, Mr. Tsepo Mungwa, who was the first complainant? Oh, Mr. Heyman, who is this one now? Miss Tabani was pardon? Mr. Mungwa. Yes, Mr. Mungwa. I'm interested. Why do you want to know who were the complainants? It's usually the state that wants to know who are the trouble causers. And well, curiously, the complainant was the South African Transport Workers Union, SATAU. Curiously, because SATAU, in an unexplained situation, wanted to withdraw the complaint and said the problem does not exist. And then Prasa management came to us to say, why are we continuing with this investigation, given that SATAO has withdrawn it? And we found that quite odd that SATAO chose to withdraw this investigation, because a lot of it has turned out to be true. Yes, one or two things we exaggerated. After SATAO then tried to withdraw, NTM, which is the National Transport Movement, please forgive me, NTM, somewhere in the report we refer to you as something that looks like a breakaway group from SATAO. Because the people in SATAO, in NTM that lodged the complaint, were in the leadership, in the executive committee of SATAO. They were then deposed following them initiating this investigation. And then they formed NTM. Well, we don't want to get into union politics. It's just we're curious why SATAO withdrew this complaint. We would love maybe some journalists to sit down with SATAO and say what really went down there. Maybe those who do forensic investigations would check the cell phone records of everyone who was involved. And that's what is going to happen, by the way, if they do the forensic as requested. On a much more serious note, they'll be checking people's bank accounts, they'll be checking people's cell phone records to check who's talking to who about what. And Ms. Tabani, when will the report be done? This one, our first request to Prasa was in November 2012. And the response was received on the 29th of August, or the comprehensive response where we got answers. The first set of answers were received on the 29th of August 2013. So we're hoping, though, that we're not going to work with each other the way we did with Prasa, that when we ask for information, we will get it, and possibly that we'll agree with them that my investigation team is going to go there and camp, like the Auditor General's people do, and get the documents on site. If they need to interview the human resources people, they do that. If they need to interview the procurement people, they would do so, because one of the impediments here was that everything was channeled through Mr. Montana, and I can't blame Mr. Montana. We just didn't understand. When we wrote to people, we didn't get answers from them. We ended up with only one answers from the set of answers from the GCEO. I think we need to just clarify to people that when you need answers from HR, we need answers from HR, and we will sit down. So what is my promise to you, ma'am, is that the team will try to conclude the investigation within the next 6 months. That is provided we don't take anything other than the ones that we had already started on, and the ones that came during the investigation, where there are serious corruption allegations. We would like that to be done by Treasury, but we will discuss the terms of reference with Treasury. That's the cost of not having resources, is that we can't just take more if we can't digest it. And the best way forward is to find partnerships that can make sure that the process moves forward. And then Ms. Moore. Well, Mr. Montana was involved in most of those things naturally because he is the GCEO. So obviously, if executives are dismissed, it would be by him. But one of the things he complained about was that everything we blamed him in the provisional report. So we've been careful now to be clear who signed what, because some of those things would have been signed at the level of a subsidiary because of the delegations of authority document, and some of the things would have been approved by the board. Our understanding is that whatever was approved by the board, it ceases to be Mr. Montana's problem because he made a recommendation and the board approved, because in Prasa, the board is not the executing authority, it is the accounting authority. So it's more like an accounting officer in its own right, but it's not called an accounting officer, it's called an accounting authority. But having said that, yes, a lot of the allegations were against Mr. Montana, and a lot of the allegations did prove to be true. We haven't at this stage, Ms. Moon, found criminality, except for the violations of the PFMA, which are technical violations that if you don't follow the money, if you don't recover the money or hold people accountable who have misappropriated funds, that is an offense under the PFMA. For example, the people, the EFT people, only one was followed up, and they should have followed the 6. But those are the kinds of criminality, not the kind of criminality which is white-collar crime, where we have found corruption. That will be part of the next phase of the investigation.
Thanks. We will take the last 2 questions. Tehila. All right. We'll end with Mr. Masombuka. We'll take the last 3.
Hello, I'm Renee de Villiers from CakeNet. I'd like to just ask about, you've sort of mentioned it, Public Protector, just about maladministration and improper conduct. A lot of it points to Mr. Montana, obviously. But what I'd like to ask is just, isn't he accountable to the board? I'd like to talk a little bit more about the board and whether they're not partly responsible for what's happening at Prasa and your findings regarding that, because I haven't heard a lot of mention about the board. So I was just wondering if you'd please talk about that a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you so much. Francis Luagamachate from Progressive Independent News Agency. In your report, I do not see where you clearly says what should actually happen with the contracts that, or with all those who benefited improperly or from these improper dealings. What should happen now with them? So that's what I wanted to check.
Sipho Masombuka for the Times newspaper. Advocate, I see with regards to the follow-up report, because I see this was necessitated by further allegations. Are you able to tell us what exactly are these allegations and whether it's the same complainant?
Thank you, sir. Perhaps we'll start with the last one about the complainants for, in respect of the new complaint, are not the original complainants. It's whistleblowers from Prasa and members of the public, and the allegations are mostly corruption. In fact, all of them are about corruption in various tenders. Some of them you have also dealt with them in the media, and I suspected some of them came from the media, except the one complainant or the group of complainants that are within the system. What Mr. Matata, what should happen to the beneficiaries of improper contracts? With the passage of time, we deliberately decided not to talk about consideration of reversal of contracts, and that's where really there are problems when you take forever to investigate maladministration. Because ideally, you should investigate it when a bad contract, so to speak, is in the process of being agreed to or has just been signed. In our case, a lot of these things were reported to us when they had just happened, because we got them in 2012. But unfortunately, the process, the runaround process, made it impossible for us to conclude. And a lot of the contracts have long been concluded themselves and payments have already been made. So we didn't think we would have to follow it. The second reason we didn't follow many of these contracts is we didn't find any impropriety from the service providers. In the contracts where we have said that the service provider should also be held accountable is when the service provider from outside actively pursued the system and encouraged people to cut corners and put pressure on them to do wrong things. In these ones, we didn't come across anything like that. We don't know, though, about some of the ones that are going to be subjected to a forensic investigation because it might come with different things. Should we discover that there's corruption, that's a different thing because as you know, Lord Denning once said that fraud unravels everything. And corruption has an element of fraud because you have to pretend certain things in the system to make it work. So should we discover corruption or the Treasury discovers corruption, they may have to take some of those contracts to court and have them declared invalid if those contracts are still alive. I hope I answered your question properly, Mr. Masambika. And then my last question is, the last answer is to Ms. Tuvelius. That's a very important question, that the GCO in Prasa accounts to the board. And accounts to the board in a more unique way, in that the board is not an executing authority or executive authority where you may say the PFMA does not apply to me and I don't always see what's happening at the level of the admin. In their case, all of these powers, the procurement powers, actually belong to the board in terms of the law. Then the board has a delegations of authority instrument where it then decides what of its powers it will delegate to the GCO, and then the GCO then decides of whatever has been delegated to him or her, what he will delegate to the executives of the subsidiary companies and the other group executives. So it is incumbent on the board to make sure that the powers it has delegated are exercised in accordance with the law, because it comes back to it. That's true. In some of the findings, we do say the board erred in doing this, and if you look at the remedial action, we're asking the board to take an active role. In the main document, we do talk about our engagement with the board, where the board indicated that it has picked up some of the systemic problems around governance and procurement management, and it is putting measures to ensure that some of those things are arrested. That is the current board. Yes. Right, I do hope that I answered everyone appropriately.
I'm sure you have.
Yes.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Public Protector. This brings us to the end of our media briefing. Kindly note that the report is available on our website, and thank you once more for your time.
Thank you to the investigation team from the Good Governance and Integrity branch. A lot of hard work went into it. As you can see, these are separate investigations. And I thank the complainants for assisting us with information, and the Prasa board and management for assistance. I do hope that in future we will be able to work a little bit better together. And lastly, but not least, thank you to you, media community, for taking an interest in this matter and other things that we do. We do hope that these stories will be carried through, and Gogo Dlamini said we'll also get to know why should she be concerned, because it's not directly a service failure issue, it's a governance failure issue. But through your stories, we hope that the Gogo Dlaminis will also understand that it concerns them, because money meant for them might then have to go elsewhere. Much appreciated.
good.
Intended, and thank you to the Deputy Public Protector for being here and the CEO.
I just arrived late. That's ADR.
It's proceeded.
No, we finished. For today, that is.
Is the state?
Well, we had to follow up. They didn't have ready. They playing ball. HOD was ball, but they didn't have ready-made answers. So it's always a challenge. And it's actually old stuff. It's something in the 90s. The work was done in the 90s.
Yes, it was. But it's all said. You said it all said those old people are.
Yes, a good number of them have passed on. You see, so it's.
Is this our one?
That's some of the challenge.
Thank you again.
This is your former.
Okay.
Is this not your pond?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me just thank them.
This is not my report. Thanks for clarifying that last one. I was already receiving messages from directors saying that the current board is not holding but I think it's clarified. They say I must talk, I must say something.
Let's hear what will you say to her?
Where do you want me to
You
sit?
can stand here or sit
Okay, I'll
Let's see
stand.
if everybody's cameras. Yeah.